On a freezing winter night, Maria found herself standing alone on the snowy streets, shivering as the wind bit through her coat. She had nowhere to go, no one waiting for her, until a warm light spilled from a nearby cafe, and a kind voice called out, "I have some mulled wine, and too much salad to eat alone." Turning toward the stranger, Maria had no idea that stepping inside would change her life forever. On New Year's Eve, a stepmother heartlessly cast her stepdaughter out of the house. But when morning came, what she saw made her blush with shame. Maria tucked her hands into the pockets of her coat, trying to warm her frozen fingers as she walked along a path trampled by the townspeople. Towering, uneven snowdrifts flanked her on either side. When Masha had stepped out of the house, the sky was heavy with falling snow. The icy flakes stung her face and tangled in her golden hair. But now, the ground lay beneath a soft, pristine blanket, each delicate snowflake resembling an intricate lace star. They danced gracefully under the glow of the street lamps, shimmering and sparkling like scattered diamonds. "What a fairy tale, isn't it?" A voice behind her broke the silence. "Exactly what one hopes to see on New Year's Eve." Thinking the words were meant for her, Masha turned around with a hopeful smile, only to feel a sudden pang of embarrassment. Behind her walked a couple, lost in their own world. The man, dressed elegantly, supported a stunning woman draped in a luxurious fur coat. "I want to see only you on New Year's Eve," he said playfully. The woman giggled, tilting her head coyly. "Only on New Year's Eve?" "No! Always," the man declared with enthusiasm. They shared a fleeting kiss before hurrying into a cab, likely rushing off to some grand celebration. Masha watched them wistfully, a dreamy expression in her eyes. How wonderful it must be, to be loved, to have someone by your side, sharing a walk beneath falling snowflakes, gazing at the stars, or watching fireworks burst into fiery blossoms in the night sky. She stopped in her tracks, tilting her head back, letting the snowflakes kiss her face. A childlike smile lit up her features as the woman's voice echoed in her mind once more. "What a fairy tale, isn't it?" But for Masha, life had never been a fairy tale. As a child, her mother, Elena Vladimirovna, would read her the most enchanting stories. Working as a librarian, she had unlimited access to the vast treasures of literature. Naturally, she passed on her love of books to her little daughter. Masha, with her gentle nature and kind heart, found solace in stories rather than in the boisterous company of other children. Her mother raised her alone, often bringing her to the library during long shifts. Masha never minded. Books were her faithful companions, their pages filled with warmth and wonder. But when Masha was just 11, everything changed. Her mother passed away. That was when her father, whom she had seen less often than Santa Claus, finally came to claim her. At least Santa made an appearance once a year, during Christmas festivities at school or kindergarten. But Pyotr Olegovich? He was little more than a ghost in her life. Masha had always known of his existence, but she soon realized he would never be there for birthdays, holidays, or special moments. Even the gifts her mother had claimed were from him had, in truth, been bought by her own hands. As Masha would later discover, Pyotr Olegovich had built an entirely different life in another city. There, he had a wife, Albina Yurievna, and a daughter, Nastenka. Nastia was a year younger than Mashenka. Before passing away, Elena Vladimirovna wrote a letter to her former lover, pleading with him. She explained that, apart from him, there would be no one else left in the world to care for Masha. The woman implored him to take responsibility for the girl, otherwise, Maria would end up in an orphanage. Whether fortunately or unfortunately, Pyotr Olegovich's conscience stirred. He came for Maria and even stood by her side during her mother's funeral. "You'll live with me now. You'll have a little sister. We'll take care of you," he promised. This man, a stranger in every sense to her. Maria vividly remembered the day she stepped over the threshold of an unfamiliar house. Her father's apartment was enormous, yet there seemed to be no place for little Mashenka. "You can't do this to us." "To me? What will I tell people? That you brought your mistress's daughter into our home?" a furious woman shrieked, her face flushing red like a tomato. Maria instinctively shrank into herself, clutching her mother's final New Year's gift, a stuffed bunny, against her chest. "Actually," her father drawled, his voice eerily calm, "the real mistress was you, or have you forgotten? Let's not twist the truth, there's nothing to hide." "No!" Albina Yurievna snapped. "I don't want to raise another woman's child." "It's decided," Peter countered. "Masha will stay with us. We'll renovate the spare room." Later, Albina gave the girl a long, scrutinizing look. Clicking her tongue disapprovingly, she planted her hands on her hips and declared, "You will help around the house, understand? Don't expect to just live here for free." And so, Maria found herself living a real-life Cinderella story. Every day, she tried to prove her worth, to earn a place in a new family. Thankfully, Her mother had raised a wonderful girl. Masha was skilled with a needle and thread, could cook simply yet delicious meals, and never shied away from housework. She excelled academically, particularly in the humanities. But it was all in vain. If she did something well, it was taken for granted. If she made a mistake, like accidentally washing white clothes with something red, punishment was swift and severe. Her father tried to treat her with kindness, but it was clear he had no desire to clash with his wife. Besides, he was often away on business trips, leaving Maria alone with her stepmother and stepsister. Nastia, unlike her mother, was a kind-hearted girl, though spoiled with endless sweets and indulgences. Secretly, she supported her older sister, even befriending her. Whenever she could, Mashenka helped Nastia with her schoolwork or other troubles. At school, they spent recess together, cherishing those moments away from Albina's watchful eyes. When Masha turned 15, her father opened a small business, a grocery store near their home. Albina promptly decided that Masha would be the one to clean the store in the evenings and, at times, work the cash register. "Why should we pay someone else when we have free labor at home?" she hummed, rubbing her hands together in satisfaction. Needless to say, Masha never received a penny for her work. The only thing that changed was the ever-growing weight of responsibilities on her slender shoulders. Yet, every once in a while, fortune smiled upon Maria. When she was about to graduate from high school and preparations for the prom were underway, the question of what she would wear arose. "I'm not wasting money just so you can parade around in a dress for one night," Albina scoffed. "You'll wear something of your sister's. We just bought her a lovely New Year's Eve outfit, but we're different sizes." Masha gasped. Maria was petite, slender, and graceful. Her younger sister, however, was built quite differently. There was enough of her to make 3 Mashenkas. "When you start earning your own money," Albina concluded coldly, "you can buy whatever you want. Then you'll turn your nose up at me." Albina sneered, clearly pleased with her idea. However, Peter Oligovich soon learned about the situation. He firmly opposed his wife's decision. "My daughter graduated with excellent marks. She's receiving a silver medal," he reminded Albina, his expression darkening. "I believe she deserves a beautiful dress." Taking Masha by the hand, he personally took her shopping. She felt embarrassed choosing a dress, but her father kept insisting, "Don't look at the price tags, pick what you truly want." Finally, she settled on an elegant gown in a delicate shade of blue. In that moment, Maria transformed from a modern-day Cinderella into a princess ready for the ball. Yet, this incident only fueled Albina's resentment. She became more determined to turn both Peter and Nastia against Masha. At times, she succeeded. "She acts so sweet and obedient when you're around, like a little lamb. But the moment you leave, she's a nightmare," Albina complained to her husband. "I don't know if it's just her rebellious phase, but she talks back to me. I tell her to be home by 9, and she says, 'I'm an adult, I'll decide for myself.' Sometimes, she doesn't return until midnight, or even later. And once, she came home reeking of alcohol. Mark my words, Petya, if this continues, she'll end up disgracing us. You've spoiled her rotten. I'm worried she'll be a bad influence on Nastenka too." Meanwhile, Masha remained blissfully unaware of the accusations against her. She had just passed her exams and eagerly applied to a prestigious institute, choosing the philology department. She dreamed of becoming a literary editor, helping authors refine their manuscripts for publication. Occasionally, she also considered teaching or social work. She felt as though endless opportunities lay before her. However, when the admission results were posted, her name was nowhere to be found. Panicked, Maria rushed to the admissions office, convinced there had been a clerical error. But the staff informed her that her application was missing. "Perhaps you withdrew it?" one of the employees asked, noticing her distressed expression. "No, of course not." Masha shook her head in disbelief. "I didn't apply anywhere else. I'm sorry, but all the budget-funded spots have already been filled, and the deadline has passed," the woman said regretfully. Holding back tears, Maria returned home and hesitantly explained what had happened to her father and stepmother. However, she chose not to mention the missing application, fearing they would blame her for the mistake. Her father pondered the situation. "What if we enroll you in a paid program? You could try transferring to a budget-funded spot later." Hope barely had a chance to take root in Masha's heart before Albina crushed it. "What? Absolutely not," she snapped, throwing the ladle into the sink with a loud clatter. "We have other priorities. We need to save for Nastenka's education. She'll be applying next year. If you didn't get in, that's your problem. You can try again next year. In the meantime, you'll help around the house and at the store. And you'll tutor Nastia for her final exams so we don't have to waste money on tutors." And so, the decision was made. Masha found herself trapped for yet another year in her gilded cage. Now, As New Year's Eve approached, a time of miracles and wish fulfillment, Maria could only wonder if one would finally come true for her. But on this New Year's night, Maria found herself in an entirely different kind of fairy tale. Strangely enough, she felt like the heroine of the 12 months. In that story, the cruel stepmother sent her stepdaughter into the forest to gather a basket of snowdrops. In real life, Albina simply threw Maria out of the apartment. She seized the opportunity when Pyotr Olegovich was stranded in another city, his flight delayed by heavy snowfall, meaning he wouldn't return until January 1st. "I'm having guests over tonight," Albina announced. "Stay out of the way, will you?" "But where am I supposed to go?" Masha asked, bewildered. "Like I care," the stepmother scoffed dismissively. And so, Masha found herself wandering through the city's snow-covered streets. She considered calling a friend but felt too ashamed to admit she'd been tossed out like an unwanted pet. As she walked, she passed a 5-story building and heard voices from a first-floor apartment. "Faster! Hurry up!" someone called. "Poor already," another voice urged, as laughter and celebration spilled out into the night. Curious, Maria glanced through the window and caught sight of the television screen. On it, the New Year's Eve countdown clock was striking midnight. Unconsciously, she took a few steps closer, her heart tightening as she stood frozen in place. "Hurrah! Happy New Year!" the voices cheered as the 12th chime echoed. Masha shut her eyes, a sob escaping her lips. She had tried to hold back her tears, but they poured out nonetheless. "Mom, I miss you so much," she whispered, tilting her face toward the sky. "And I'm so tired." Tears streamed down her cheeks, carving cold, damp paths along her skin. She silently pleaded for a sign, anything, to assure her that things would get better. She wasn't sure how long she stood there, lost in her sorrow. Firecrackers burst nearby, their echoes crackling through the frosty air. People appeared on balconies, watching the fireworks light up the sky. Realizing she needed to move on, Maria hastily wiped her tears. Just then, bam! "Ow!" she yelped, startled as something struck her forehead. Rubbing the sore spot, she bent down and noticed a small object that had bounced off her and landed in the snow at her feet. She reached down and picked up a velvet box. As she opened it, more fireworks exploded above, illuminating the night with bursts of color. In their glow, the box's contents sparkled, a delicate, enchanting ring. Maria's heart skipped a beat. She stared at the tiny jewel, mesmerized. Then she lifted her gaze, searching for the owner. Could it really have fallen from the sky? Surely, someone would lean out and claim it at any moment. But no one did. The people in the windows weren't looking at her. They were captivated by the fireworks. Behind the man, multicolored lights sparkled on the Christmas tree. Vika stood with her back to him, as striking as ever, her posture proud, her glittering outfit shimmering as if woven from countless rhinestones. "Vika," he called softly. She was just finishing her champagne, her eyes fixed on the TV screen. As she turned, she gasped, pressing a hand to her mouth and setting the empty glass aside. "No, no way," she exclaimed, a broad smile spreading across her face as tears welled in her brown eyes. "Vika," Matvey breathed. "We've been together for almost 2 years now. You know how much I cherish you, how deeply I love you. I've realized that I want to begin the new year with you, as my fiancée, and soon, as my wife." He paused, then finally asked the long-awaited question, "Will you marry me?" Only then did he realize, in his nervous haste, that he had forgotten to open the small box. As he did, Victoria's gaze fell upon the ring. Her lashes fluttered, her brows arched in surprise. The radiant smile faded, replaced by an expression of disbelief. The tears in her eyes dried as quickly as they had formed. "Is this a joke?" she exhaled, tossing her long black curls over her shoulder. "What are you talking about?" Matvey asked, genuinely confused. Her face flushed with irritation, her posture stiffening. "I mean that thing you're holding in your hands, Matvey," she shrieked, clenching her fists. "I saw that ring when we were out shopping. I know exactly how much it costs. My manicure looks better than that cheap trinket." Vika had thrown tantrums before. Matvey's friends called women like her passionate, a trait he had once found charming. But now, her outburst was not just inappropriate, it was humiliating. A slap in the face. "You're asking me to marry you, but you don't appreciate me. You don't even understand me," she ranted. "Tell me, what am I supposed to show my friends today? This?" She jabbed a finger toward the ring in the box. "Do you even know what an engagement ring should look like? It should have a big stone, a heart cut, a princess cut." "Listen," Matvey interrupted, struggling to keep his voice steady. "An engagement ring is a gift, something I chose with my heart, not my wallet." "Oh, I can tell. The price tag must have been so tiny you didn't even see it," she sneered. For a brief moment, Matvey pressed his lips together, willing himself to stay calm. There was still a faint hope, a sliver of a chance, that he could make her understand. "I chose this ring because it reminded me of the one my father gave my mother," he said carefully, knowing he was standing on a precipice. Back when they had nothing, he made her a ring himself, welding it in his apprenticeship. Later, when he could afford it, he bought her one just like this. They were students, struggling, but I've never seen two people love each other more. Madhvi swallowed hard. He could still recall the moment he spotted the ring in the jewelry store, nestled in a corner, barely catching the light, a delicate scattering of tiny stones, sparkling like fairy dust. It was the same design his father had given his mother after years of saving, two thin gold bands intertwined, looping endlessly like vines. His father, ever the romantic, had called it the symbol of infinity. "It represents the infinity of my love," his father had always said with quiet pride. Later, Madhvi had learned the sacrifice behind that ring. His father's salary had been delayed, so he took on extra work, driving long hours to save every ruble. But the joy on his mother's face had made every effort worth it. Even after many years, Madhvi would catch his mother absent-mindedly admiring the ring. Whether she was chopping vegetables, sewing, or simply watching television, there would be moments when she'd twist her hand just so, letting the light dance across the gold. Last year, his mother fell ill. Within just a few months, she had lost a significant amount of weight. Her fingers had grown so thin that her ring slipped right off. So, Lyubov Ivanovna decided to thread it onto a chain and wear it close to her heart. I remember my father offering to take the ring to a jeweler to have it resized, but my mother flatly refused. She assured him with a smile, "I'll get better. I'll put the weight back on, and then I just have to resize it again." But she never recovered. That New Year's Eve was her last. And just 6 months later, my father followed. Longing for a beloved woman may not be listed as a medical condition, but everyone in the family knew the truth. Denis Petrovich had left this world just to be with her, with his Lubachka. Lyubov and Denis had loved each other fiercely, from their very first year at university until their very last breath. Thinking of them, Madhvi understood, if he were to love, it had to be like that. No compromises. No half measures. But now, as he looked at Victoria's contorted expression, a horrifying realization settled over him. He had almost made a terrible mistake. "Ah!" Victoria exhaled with a smirk. "So, not only do you have terrible taste, but you're also a mama's boy? You do everything with your parents in mind?" Madhvi's face turned to stone. A moment later, it seemed to pale, drained of color, devoid of emotion. "Are you serious?" he asked in a low voice. Slowly, he rose to his feet, aware that he had still been kneeling, as if a night before a princess who had betrayed his loyalty. Only now, he saw the truth. She wasn't a princess. "You just ruined such an important moment over the price of a ring?" His voice was quiet, but there was an edge to it. "Do you even realize how meaningless money is compared to what's between two people? If you didn't like it, we could have picked another one. Together." "Oh, so now it's my fault?" she snapped, throwing her hands up. Not you. I'm the one being humiliated here. You valued me at 3 pennies. Madhvi let out a slow breath, his expression unreadable. "Maybe we just measure love differently," he murmured. "Some in money, others in feelings." He had always known that Vika loved gifts. He had tried, time and time again, to please her. But now, he saw it clearly, they spoke entirely different love languages. Victoria, however, had stopped listening. "Do you even realize that my friends invited me to celebrate New Year's with them tonight?" she lamented. "Dmitry Yuzachev will be there, you know, the one who inherited his father's company. He even has a yacht, and he doesn't take his eyes off me. And yet, like an idiot, I stayed here with you. I actually pitied you, Madhvi." "Pity?" he echoed, his voice barely above a whisper. He had truly believed she had wanted to spend this evening with him, that she had understood what it meant to him, his first New Year's Eve without his parents. He had imagined a quiet, special night, decorating the tree together, cooking dinner side by side, brewing mulled wine, waking up next to each other on January 1st. He hadn't even considered parting with his friends. This year had been too hard. "Of course I pitied you," Victoria muttered. "I mean, it's your first New Year's without them." Madhvi closed his eyes for a brief moment, as if trying to process what he had just heard. But he couldn't. Unbidden, Borka's words surfaced in his mind, his best friend, who had tried to talk sense into him. "You're only rushing into this because you lost your family and you're desperate to start a new one." Borka had warned him. "Vika isn't the right woman for you, Madhvi. You're different. You'll see." And he hadn't listened. Now, he wished he had. Victoria stepped back from him, her expression cold. She turned, walked over to the table, and poured herself a full glass of sparkling wine. Her movements were so abrupt and erratic that some of the champagne spilled onto the table. Vika downed her drink in one gulp. The abandoned groom, still clutching the velvet box with the ring, stared at her in disbelief. Then go. Go to Dimitri, to your friends, where you're truly valued. But know this, there's no coming back. She flashed her eyes at him, grabbed her phone, and stormed out. Matvey didn't even turn to watch her leave. He tightened his grip on the box, and then, driven by emotion, stepped onto the balcony. With a sharp motion, he flung open the window and hurled the ring box into the night. By then, Victoria had already rushed out of the building, hastily draping a jacket over her shoulders. Holding her phone to her ear, she seethed, "Yes. I'm on my way. I already called a cab. You were right. He gave me a cheap trinket instead of an engagement ring." Her voice was thick with resentment. "He doesn't value me at all." "Excuse me," Maria called out hesitantly. Vika spun around, bristling. "What do you want?" I heard about the ring. It fell in the snow. Is it yours?" Maria extended the small burgundy box. The brunette let out an exasperated groan, rolling her eyes. "Keep that trash. I don't ever want to see it again." She sneered. "Take my fiancé too, if you want. Apartment 10. Consider it a New Year's gift." She smirked, her beauty twisted by malice. Maria recoiled, baffled at how someone so striking could appear so unsettling. The car pulled up, whisking the arrogant young woman away into the night. Maria lingered, gazing at the entrance before squaring her shoulders and stepping inside. A lively group of revelers stumbled past, draped in tinsel. "Happy New Year," a chorus of drunken voices cheered. "And to you." Maria smiled, inhaling the warm scent of festivities inside the building. She found apartment 10 and pressed the doorbell. A young man answered, looking like a university senior. "Hello," she greeted softly, extending the burgundy box. "Is this yours?" It hit me right in the forehead. He stared at the box, then at Maria. A faint grin tugged at his lips, a poor attempt at masking his emotions. "I suppose it's yours now. The ring found you." Maria flushed. "No way! You can't just throw away something this beautiful." She scolded him gently. "Have you even noticed how it shimmers? It's stunning." Matvey froze, tilting his head slightly as he studied her face more intently. She was lovely, her cheeks flushed pink from the cold, her damp hair clinging to her skin. His gaze dropped to her hand, still gripping the box. "May I see your hand?" he asked, taking the box from her. Blinking in surprise, she naively and trustingly extended her palm, her delicate fingers traced with faint lines. He held back a chuckle, shook his head slightly, then carefully took her hand in his own. Her fingers were red, stiff with cold. Gently, he slid the ring onto one of them. "Perhaps it will bring you more happiness than it did me," he murmured. "Happy New Year." Maria stared, mesmerized. "You know, this is my only present," she whispered, exhaling softly. "Thank you." Something stirred in Matvey's chest. He suddenly became aware of the threshold still separating them, and of the fact that he was still holding her hand. "Would you?" He hesitated, then, before he could second-guess himself, asked, "Would you like to come in?" The girl hesitated for a moment, contemplating her options. She vividly imagined herself stepping back into the cold, snow-covered streets. How long would she have to wander alone? "I have some spiced mulled wine," Matvey offered with a gentle smile. "And salads. I can't eat them all by myself." Masha laughed, then nodded. "I'd love to." They spent hours in the warm, cozy apartment, sitting near the twinkling Christmas tree. They laughed, shared stories, and got to know each other. Matvey confided in his guest that he was in his final year at university, studying computer science and programming. "To be honest, I'm really interested in app development," he admitted. "I even have an idea I'm working on. Hopefully, next year, it will come to life." It was something he had never shared, not even with his friends or his ex-fiancée. Maria revealed that she planned to reapply to university in the summer to study literary editing. For now, she worked at her father's shop, but without pay, just out of obligation. As the hours passed in a blur, Matvey eventually hurried to the kitchen. "Masha, do you want black tea or green? There's also red. Maybe fruit." He stopped mid-sentence as he returned to the room. Maria had curled up on the couch, fast asleep. Matvey chuckled softly and draped a blanket over her. He switched off the Christmas tree lights so they wouldn't disturb her, then quietly left her to rest. Morning arrived, and Matvey greeted the new day not with his runaway bride, but with a newfound companion. He couldn't quite explain the feeling. It was as if he had reconnected with an old friend, someone with whom everything felt easy, natural, and comforting. Someone he could trust. After breakfast, he walked Masha home. However, just as they were about to part ways, the door to her apartment flung open. "Where the hell have you been?" her father's voice thundered. Behind him, her stepmother peered out. "See? I told you!" The moment you step out, she runs off. She already has a boyfriend, the shameless girl, she shrieked triumphantly. Before Matvey could react, Pyotr Olegovich grabbed his daughter's arm and yanked her inside, slamming the door in Matvey's face. Masha was stunned. She hadn't expected her father to return home just before midnight, dressed as Santa Claus, carrying a sack of presents. She also hadn't expected Albina, her stepmother, to twist the story, convincing him that Masha had run away, disregarding family values. She hadn't even taken her phone with her, so no one knew where she was. "I didn't run away," Masha protested, her face flushing with anger. "Albina kicked me out. She said I'd be in the way." "How dare you lie about me?" the woman gasped, feigning outrage. Pyotr hesitated, his expression conflicted, until his gaze landed on the ring on Masha's hand. His eyes darkened. "What is this?" he muttered, seizing her wrist. "Where did you get this ring?" "It was a gift." "And why, exactly, would someone give you a gift like this? Is this how I raised you?" Masha yanked her hand away, her voice shaking with emotion. "You didn't raise me at all. Mom did it on her own. And now, after all these years, you think you can just waltz back into my life and pretend we're a family?" Tears welled up in her eyes. "It's too late for that. We're not a family. You believe everything Albina says, and you don't even see me. No matter how hard I try, I'll never belong in your world. Tonight was a perfect example of that. Except you won't have to put up with me much longer. God willing, I'll get in, and you won't have to see me anymore." "Oh, but you will," Albina smirked, a knowing grin spreading across her face. "And what if the application goes missing again?" Maria's expression shifted in an instant. A realization clicked in her mind. She narrowed her eyes. "How do you know it was the application that went missing?" she asked, her gaze locking onto Albina's face. I don't know," Albina stammered. "You just said—" "I didn't," Maria interrupted, shaking her head. Nastia, who had been silently observing the unfolding scene, finally snapped. "I can't do this anymore," she burst out. "Masha, I'm sorry, but it was Mom. She pulled some strings and took your application. She said she didn't want you to leave the store. She wanted you working there full-time. She didn't want to hire anyone else. And she also said I'd need your help, that I'd never get in without you. I'm sorry. I really am." Maria felt a tightness in her chest, her head spinning. Pyotr turned to his wife, stunned. "Did you really do this?" he asked. "What's the big deal?" Albina scoffed, waving a dismissive hand. "If she stays home for another year, what difference does it make?" The couple quickly descended into another heated argument. Nastia stood there, crying. Meanwhile, Maria felt completely disconnected. What was she even doing here? Her thoughts drifted to Matvey, the stranger who, somehow, felt closer to her than her own family ever had. And just as she thought of him, the doorbell rang. Matvey stood on the threshold. "You haven't left?" Masha asked, surprised. "I did, but not far," he admitted with a smile. "My feet led me back." "Come with me?" "Where to?" she asked hesitantly. "To the new year." His grin widened as he extended his hand. "You know, the weather there, it's magical." Masha glanced over her shoulder. Her father and stepmother were so engrossed in their argument that they wouldn't even notice her absence. She took a deep breath, then slipped her hand into Matvey's, allowing herself to be led into a new, snowy fairy tale, one filled with wonder and happiness. From that moment on, Matvey and Maria were inseparable. Matvey simply couldn't leave Masha behind in that toxic home. At first, they were just friends, but soon they realized they had fallen in love. Their feelings were sincere, tender, and profoundly real. That summer, Maria was finally accepted into the institute, bringing her one step closer to her dream. Matvey, too, achieved a major milestone. His application was released and became a success. But he didn't stop there. When Victoria discovered that her ex-fiancé had money and had landed a position at a prestigious IT company, she attempted to worm her way back into his life. It turned out that the wealthy man on the yacht, the one she had chosen over Matvey, was a womanizer who treated his partners as disposable. But by the time she realized her mistake, it was too late. Matvey's heart already belonged to someone else. 3 years after their first meeting, on another New Year's Eve, he proposed to Masha. But Masha, smiling softly, refused a new engagement ring. "I already have one," she said. "The most beautiful one, even a little bit magical." In the years that followed, Masha and Matvey built a wonderful life together. They had 2 beautiful children, proof that sometimes, even the coldest of winters can lead to the warmest of beginnings. A boy and a girl. Maria's relatives, after apologizing to her, remained a part of her life. Nastia learned to stand up to her mother and became a good sister to her. Pyotr Olegovich, though he had not been the best father, made an effort to be a good grandfather. Even Albina came to recognize her mistakes, admitting that her jealousy toward Masha had clouded her judgment. But most importantly, throughout their marriage, Madhvi often noticed how Masha, whether engrossed in reading someone else's manuscript or playing with their children, would occasionally extend her right hand, just to admire the ring that had changed their lives.